Yep. Please take notice that the Wellfleet Conservation Commission, in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wellfleet Environmental Protection Bylaw, will hold a public hearing in person in the basement of Town Hall and via Zoom on Wednesday, August 5th, 2026. Public hearings begin at 4 p.m. The business meeting will follow. In attendance, we have Michael Fisher, John Fortnoy, Barbara Brennesel, Robert Stewart, and Leon Shreve. So we have a quorum. First case we will hear is Lisa Cohn, trustee, 145 Pine Point Road, map 21, parcel 55, SE 077-1700. Notice of intent to construct a new dwelling, vegetation restoration, install a septic system. This was continued from May 20th, 2026, June 17th, 2026, and now in July 15th, 2026.
Yeah. For the record, I'm John O'Reilly. Joining me at the table is Attorney Ben Zender. Thank you for the ongoing continuances. It is appreciated. We did supply the commission last week a variance analysis narrative as well as a alternative analysis for the regulation relative to no work within the buffer zone on lots created prior to 2003 or after 2003. So just to refresh everyone's memory, we have a lot that has several resources on it. First and foremost, which generates the 50 and 100 foot buffer zone, is the coastal bank that's defined by the DEP Technical Bulletin 92-1 that's been in effect since 1992. So we have developed a plan that we are in possession of. Mr. Cohn, who I believe is on the line listening, Mr. Cohn engaged Peter Haig of AD Architecture to come up with a footprint that best fit the available room beyond the 50-foot buffer, as well as meeting the zoning setbacks of the property. We are asking for several variances from your local regulations. And so what we've done is we've prepared a narrative outlining the variance request, as well as some information regarding, I'll let Ben get into it, on what happens if not successful for the variance. So again, we have been in front of the Board of Health. Wellfleet Board of Health did grant the necessary variances to the bank as well as to the property line. We are proposing a nitro system to further treat the effluent from the wastewater. We are over 186 feet to the salt marsh, which is the closest resource associated with groundwater. And the house is located just over 50 foot from the top of the coastal bank. And again, the top of the coastal bank or the bank is defined by an elevated landform subject to 100-year flooding, being the 13-foot contour. It is not a sediment source, and the performance standards associated with the bank when it's a land subject to flooding and an elevated landform is the stability of that slope. So we've designed the house to be a crawl space, so excavation is half as deep as typical of a full foundation. And as such, we feel very comfortable in stating that in no way would the foundation of the house construction undermine or deteriorate the coastal bank, being a vertical buffer to the stormwater. We do have members from Wilkinson Ecological Design who put together a robust mitigation plan. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them on that front. But at this point, I think I'll then I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Good, Gareth.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. First of all, it's nice to be here again. It's been a while since I've been in this room with this point. It's nice to see you all again. My name is Ben Zender. I'm the everyone who has been brought in to represent Tom and Lisa on this project. And I'm not usually in front of conservation commissions at the hearing level because it's really usually an engineering study that you're doing and you're looking at the mitigation and you're looking at the project and the performance standards. But increasingly what's happening is I'm finding there are some situations where you just can't build a house because of a regulation. So in front of the Board of Health and Sure last night, same type of situation. This is an unusual situation, and your bylaw grants you the authority to grant variance, and we have the burden of going to you, clear and convincing proof that the proposed work or its impact and effects will not adversely affect the public interest and environmental values protected by the bylaw. Essentially, that's the same analysis that you look at when you're asked to approve an order of conditions. You're looking at that no adverse impact standard. In this case, there's a couple of unusual things that happened. One is Tom and Lisa bought the property, had it surveyed. The delineation of the coastal bank, in talking to John, I don't think was correct. I think the DEP's position on how you delineate a coastal bank is pretty clear. It has been for a long time. But based on that delineation, Tom and Lisa understood that this was a buildable lot. They came in front of your commission. You understood that it was a buildable lot. And you made the findings in 2016 of the no adverse impact such that it could be a condition such that those interests were to be protected. So there's already been a demonstration, and I think an acknowledgement by the town, or at least by this commission, that the lot can be built on without that adverse impact. Tom and Lisa did not elect to build under that. There were some extensions under the act. Were not there. They withdrew it. In this particular case, I think what John has shown you by plan and what Wilkinson has shown you by plan is that this particular lot can be built without any adverse impacts. And I think we've demonstrated a clear and convincing standard of no adverse impact. The other requirement for a variance is that we demonstrate an alternatives analysis. John has given you some alternatives. I don't think they work. And finally, the division of the lot post 2003 or not finally, but the division of the lot post 2003 didn't really take away buildable land. Because as you're aware from looking at the plan, the buffer zone, the 100-foot jurisdictional line kind of runs along the road and runs along the property. So it's not as if this division actually, took away buildable land. It was never really buildable in that area. So the division is sort of a no harm, no foul. Finally, and this is what we run into, Tom and Lisa paid, and look at the assessing records, $900,000 for this piece of property. They've put a lot of money to try to develop it. They've built their future plans on what they want to do with this property. And now they find out through, I think, John's analysis that this is not compliant with that section of your bylaw. This regulation, if you don't grant the variance, the effect of the regulation really is that the lot's not buildable. It's not as if we can ask for some small variation to make it buildable. So unless you grant this variance, this lot becomes an unbuildable lot. And that's going to throw it into the regulatory taking arena, which we try to stay away from. And if we can't get the variance, they're going to have to obviously try to figure out how they can, get some relief on this. What we'd be looking for if we had to deal with this later on would be either a determination that the regulation can't be applied here because we've demonstrated that we meet the standard, or else a payment from the town of what the regulation has cost Tom and Lisa, which is essentially the difference in value between, what it's worth with and without the variance. I'm saying that because I have to say that. I'm sorry to say that to you, but I'm hoping that in this particular case, because you've granted this order of conditions before, because John and Wilkinson have demonstrated that there's no adverse impact, you can find that we meet that variance standard and maybe condition this in some way or manage the project in some way to help the board do the best job that it can to allow this lot to be developed at the same time to protect the interest that you try to protect. So that's all I really have to say. Thank you.
Well, if I can say something here.
Do we want to hear from Amy? Do we want to hear from you right now? Or should we?
You're on
you're
mute, Amy.
You're muted.
Happens every single time. If the commissioners have questions, I'd like to hear those first, maybe. The technical questions, and then I can weigh in on what was just presented.
Just a quick question. Do you want to correct the error in your letter of July 29th?
could you identify the error?
Yes, you say that the assessed value is $1,080 on page 2, second paragraph. It sort of undercuts your whole argument about the buildability of it.
I missed a zero there. What am I trying to do?
She missed.
Yeah, no, it is. No, I'm so sorry. That's a misprint. No, the assessed value is $1,080,000. I'm really sorry, that was a misprint on my part.
Might be 1,084. Robert?
Your introduction was spoken very rapidly,
I'm sorry.
and I got correct me here if I'm wrong, but at some point you seem to imply that this lot when subdivided, talking about the previous value before we got to this meeting today, and there was some implication in my mind that this was already a devalued site before we got to this meeting.
I don't. No. I'm not trying to make that implication.
Then I'd like you to go back
Yes.
and describe the history of this site in a more aims manner.
Maybe John can give you the history of the site. My understanding is that the site was divided in 2015. It was improved with a single family residence. It was divided under the zoning bylaw to create a lawfully buildable lot under zoning.
What?
A lawfully buildable lot under zoning. And then that lot was conveyed to Commons.
Okay, and the lawfully buildable lot is the one with the dwelling on it now?
No, under zoning, and I'm going to separate zoning from conservation. Under the zoning bylaw, you're required.
If I may, an A&R plan, it was an approval not required plan in 2015. An approval not required plan does not create a lawfully buildable lot. Absolutely not. All you have to prove for an A&R is that you have frontage. You can have an A&R with insufficient building area, etc. It's the building department that determines if it's a lawfully buildable lot. So I would object to that characterization, and I did have to correct that. I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry.
Well, I'll rephrase it. The A&R plan created a lot that met the area requirements and the reform requirements under the Wellfleet zoning bylaw. It was not a determination by the building inspector, lawful building. But the plan that was presented to the planning board for endorsement created two lots that met both the area requirements and the frontage requirements for the Wellfleet zoning.
Now, in terms of the A&R requirements, which lot are we talking about?
They were both created by the A&R process. Single plan that was endorsed by the planning. Endorsed.
Okay, lot 2 has a house on it. Lot 1 also a buildable lot?
Under the Wellfleet zoning code, it has the area and the frontage that's required under the code to be buildable under the Wellfleet zoning code.
Okay, that clarifies things. Thank you both.
One is the
Perhaps you can explain. We got the initial proposal. There was absolutely no mention of this regulation that you're expecting the variation later. Why wasn't it talked about?
I can't tell you the answer. I wasn't involved at that time. I don't know why it wasn't mentioned. I can assume, which I hate to do, but I can assume that the engineers that did the work calculated or delineated the coastal bank. And based on that delineation, there was sufficient area and landward at the top of the coastal bank to undertake this. But I can't tell you why.
Okay. In your letter of the July 29th, you say This regulation provides no guidance regarding allowable alteration on previous undeveloped lots created after November 19th, 2003.
Well, the regulation as in 2.014D1A. Within the 100-foot buffer zone, the commission may allow the total alteration of up to 3,000 square feet on a lot reported prior to November 19th, 2003. It doesn't in any way define what the regulation says with regards to lots after that. I think it can be read that this means that you can't make any alteration within the 100-foot buffer zone on lots after that. I mean, I think that's a fair interpretation of what that says, but what I'm saying is the regulation itself doesn't say it. It says for lots prior to this, you can all less than 3,000.
What's a matter of our interpretation of the law?
At this point, I think it is.
Well, that's why we asked for advice from an attorney.
Yeah, and I expect that you'll listen to your counsel.
So we are all in agreement right now. As per our bylaw, this is.
You're in agreement as to that. What I'm suggesting is that
What I've heard is calls on the suffering, et cetera, but we wouldn't be here if we weren't adverse to the bylaw.
that's fair. I think that's a fair statement.
As I recall, from the original documentation, we we're going to build a house that's kind of stepped and staggered, right, hugging the road, right on the edge of the road.
It's, the house, the front of the house is 30.6 feet away from the property.
Beyond it in the back is 50.
Correct. The actual footprint of the house, it's the ground is within that, the buffer and the zoning setbacks. Front lot line and the side line. We show a small cantilevered area, second floor cantilevered area. I've no on the ground, but it does extend. It's clearly noted on.
And just to jump in with something that you may want to consider later on, because and you all know this, you've known this for a long time. There's always a tension between the zoning bylaw requirement that you not have any structures within 30 feet of your line, and the interest you're protecting with there's no activity within a certain distance of 50 foot or other lot line, other wetland resource line. Theoretically, we could go to the zoning board and ask for a variance. Zoning bylaw. To allow the structure to be located closer to the front lot line than 30 feet, but that would require a variance. They just changed the variance criteria in the state in July of this year, so that the state is more relaxed for getting a variance. I'm not sure what that does to this project, but theoretically there is the ability to receive 50 grants, some type of variance, to try to manage this project in some way to move further, less of the project.
But it would still be in the hundreds.
It would still be in the 100. It would, but again, I feel that the 50 is probably important area for the win.
Well, I guess I've overstepping so far. I'd like to understand what harm to the environment. It's, I mean, to be fair, I mean, we're going to make a decision based on a bylaw and spend on. Also, like, what the damage.
Well, in this place is coastal habitat. I understand that the mitigation plan looks like really good. Because well, the house was currently undeveloped land. And within the coastal zone,
This is just above the sand. What's the sandy area? This is right above that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, anytime undeveloped land becomes developed land, there's always impacts to the natural environment. It's no longer natural.
What about this overhang that violates the 50? Is that an important component of this house? Because, you can start with an overhang and then 10 years from now, someone, an owner can come with a proposal to close in the bottom, and it's just gonna be a creeping invasion of what we're trying to protect.
700 square feet of disturbed area in the 0 to 50.
I'm not comfortable with any disturbance in the sort of fit, any, including an overhead. But I assume the project can be altered to deal with that, but that's a starting or ending point for me.
There's also the option of getting the variance to go closer to the road. They've done that on Ocean View Drive when they've had to move houses away from the bank. They're sitting basically on the road.
And they're also requesting a variance from the 3,000 square feet of disturbed area. There are around 4,600 square feet of disturbed area.
Who's that?
The project.
Another thing I'm not sure about.
I'd like to hear from town
I would
council.
like. to
Okay,
hear-
yeah, let's hear from town council.
Sure. So thank you again, Amy Questle with Town Council's office. So what I have that they are looking for is they are looking for pulling up the I'm sorry, I'm just pulling up they're looking so under 2.014 D1A, it says within 100 foot of buffer zone, the commission may allow a total alteration of up to 3,000 square feet on a lot recorded prior to November 19th, 2003. So they're looking for a variance from the 3,000 square feet, and they're looking for approximately 4,600 square feet. And they're looking for a variance from the November 19th, 2003 date. So they're looking for, essentially they're looking for over 4,600 square feet of disturbed alteration on a lot that was created in 2015. So there's a couple things. If you go to your regulations, which mimic your bylaw in some ways, it basically says that the 100-foot why the 100-foot buffer zone is there. It's significant for groundwater quality, flood control, erosion, sedimentation control, storm damage prevention. So there is a reason why there is no construction within the 100-foot buffer zone. I think that you guys are really evaluating this correctly. They probably should have at least tried to obtain a variance to push the house closer to the road. The variance standards changed on July 1st, and it's easier to get a variance at this point. But it would appear to me that even under the old standard, they would have an argument for a variance due to soil shape topography, but which carries over into the new standard. But the new standard is definitely less strict. So that should have been an alternative on their alternatives analysis, and that isn't listed. Their alternatives analysis actually only has one alternative. That I just wanted to note that. And they don't discuss reducing the size of the disturbance, meaning why do they need, they don't explain why they need the variance over 3,000 square feet of disturbance. That has not been explained at all in the documents that I've seen. And so, it would be you would be very hard pressed at this point to grant a variance for the over 3,000 without a better explanation. And then the other thing is, Attorney Zender, mentioned, I think he was mentioning takings, but he never said the word takings, which I thought was interesting. But, there is, with regard to taking, it is fact-based, definitely. And we're talking about a lot that was created in 2015. This isn't something where there was a long-standing investment-backed expectation. the cases that were cited in the variance, in the written variance, particularly the Smith case, that, has the facts there are not at all in comparison with the facts here. And then furthermore, what I thought was interesting was that Attorney Zender stated that even before this lot was created, none of this area was buildable, because no matter how they created this lot, the majority of the lot is within the 100-foot buffer zone, which you can see from the A&R plan, that just by the shape of what was there and the shape of what they've created, there was no way they were going to be able to get a lot that had, sufficient upland where they didn't need to seek this variance. So, I think that if they wanted to move forward, the only way that this commission could really analyze the variance, because a variance is, it's a significant form of relief. And so, if this board did want to move forward with a variance, I think you would have to have more reasons than were given. So you would have, it would be better if they couldn't move the house further away from the 100-foot buffer. It would be, significant if they couldn't reduce the size of the house for some reason or not. But none of those things were laid out in the alternatives analysis. And those are usually the first things that we see in an alternatives analysis. Is there's no other way we can place this, because we've already gone to the ZBA and they've already said no to a setback variance, or we're only proposing a 2-bedroom house, we can't make it any smaller, so I'm not sure you have all the information that for you to validly issue a variance. So I don't know if you have any direct questions for me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, I think the fact that if they were to get a variance where they could move the house, it's still within the 100-foot, still uphill from.
So, but that is something that you need to consider. So you need to consider, are they even going to, did they even try to get it as much as possible out of the 100-foot? I mean, right now, just the fact that there's 700 square feet between 0 and 50, that's pretty significant. It's pretty, presumptuous to come in with a plan showing that there's actual alteration within the 50. If they could keep the whole thing, in any event, that's a policy decision on your part. That's not a legal presumption.
We want to offer them an option to.
Yeah, amazing. This is really valuable time for us. Don't think I want you to take a vote on the application. No, I haven't asked for the board, and I won't approve it. So I'm going to ask for or whether a variance allow us to minimize that disturbance, to try to manage this project in a way that maybe once you want to tell me right now, don't bother, just go back and go to the architect and that's going to cost us money. So you want to tell us don't bother, you're dead on arrival, we won't.
We can't without more information.
I know that, John. I just
What is the what would be right now?
30 feet required. 30 feet required, but that's 30 feet available right there. It's obviously the size of the house itself, and then so I think your council issues. I'm happy to request a continuance.
How long?
I'm not, again, I haven't been in front of you, so I don't know how you operate. I mean, I think what I'd rather do is ask for 30 and then maybe communicate request for further continuance out there. For us to go to the Board of Appeals, it's going to take, so how about a 60-day continuance? That's acceptable. I mean, 30 is going to make me come back and burden Alicia with another request. I guess I need to do that.
October 7th or October 21st.
I'm gonna ask for the 21st, but let me have
So I move that we continue this to October 21st. Okay.
I'll second that, just so we have a motion on the table.
But I just first say, I'm seriously touching fellas.
Yeah, I understand that, John. I clearly heard that.
Okay, we have a motion, seconded.
Yes.
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 Yes, and yes.
I'm sorry, that was the 17th of October?
No, it's the 21st.
I'm sorry, 21st, thank you. Thank you all for your time. Good to see you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
And that was October 21st, correct?
Yeah,
Great. I'll plan on being here. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay. The next, that was very interesting. The next hearing is Alyssa Robinson, 156 Lieutenant Island Road. It's parcel feet. 50 SE 077-1697 and notice of intent to rebuild a small cottage, install a new septic system. That's been continued from April 1st, 2026, April 15th, 2026, May 20th, 2026, and June 17th, 2026, and they're asking for another continuance until September 16th.
So moved.
Second, Michael.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. And the next hearing is Paul Foley, 450 Independent Island Road, map 41, parcel 82, a request for determination to upgrade an existing cesspool, providing innovative alternative technology. So someone here to speak to that?
Yeah.
And I should note that I'm a trustee of the Conservation Trust, which has a conservation restriction on the adjacent property. But I believe that I can still speak objectively and make the proper decision.
I believe you can. Okay with that?
Yes, that's fine. Good afternoon, for the record, I'm Laura Schofield from Schofield Brothers, representing Paul Foley and his sister Betsy Herman at their 450 Lieutenant Island Road property. I'm sorry I missed you at the site visit this morning. I usually try to get there, but I was having some issues this morning. I'm here now, so I'm happy to explain the project. It's pretty straightforward. This is a septic system upgrade. This is an existing 4-bedroom house that has 2 cesspools. There's one out behind the house and one in front of the house. So these are being upgraded. And we're here before you because the Wellfleet Harbor ACEC overlaps this entire property. Most of the property is within land subject to coastal storm flowage, which is delineated here by elevation 13, which is the start line on my plan. So it kind of runs right in front of the house. Across the street, we have a salt marsh that has a coastal bank associated with it, and the 100-foot buffer zone to that coastal bank just touches the southerly property line right here. So this little corner of the property is within the 100-foot to the coastal bank. And it doesn't show up on any DEP wetland maps or anything like that, but in the backyard of this property, there's an area of standing groundwater in the spring. So we located that. We're out there a couple of times during the high groundwater season, where the groundwater just ponds there for a while and eventually recedes. Our well serving the house is in this corner of the property. So in terms of site constraints, when it came to the septic system design, we're trying to keep it outside of the 100-foot buffer to the coastal bank, keep it as far away from the area of ponded groundwater, and also obviously keep it as far away from the well as we could. So that's why we ended up with the leaching area in the front corner of the property. And that actually works out well because it allows us to keep the bottom of the leaching area, the 5 feet above the high groundwater elevation. So that was nice to be able to do that. So there's plumbing that comes out of the basement in this house, which is why we have our septic tank down here. That requires us to have a pump basin in order to pump the effluent up to our leaching area. We are proposing an Advantech system, which is the best available nitrogen reducing system. The Board of Health has already approved project. We've called for erosion control, and which I didn't cover it, but it basically gives us a little bit of working room around the septic tank and then just runs it up the property line. There are some locust trees where the soil absorption system's going, so those will come out. After the system's in, the area will be loamed and seeded with a rye fescue mix, and happily we have easy construction access from the road. So that's it. Obviously, in terms of environmental benefit, this is way better than the two cesspools, and this one probably sits in groundwater for at least part of the year. So I'm happy to answer any
What will
questions.
be done with the two cesspools?
They'll be filled in, just filled in, and that's it, abandoned.
I like this project a lot.
I think I'd like to, could you say a little bit more about this impervious barrier that's going to go down 5 feet? What does that do to the flow of water through there?
So the reason I have that is you're supposed to provide 20 feet to your cellar wall, and we don't have enough room. So what that is, it's like a heavy polyvinyl plastic barrier. So it literally is just it's very rigid. So at the edge of your excavation, it just goes in like this, and we call out the top of the elevation to be the breakout elevation of the septic system, and then it just extends down below the basement floor elevation, and that's just to prevent any effluent that might migrate horizontally. It hits that and then it just goes down, and that's to provide an equal level of public health protection to the cellar.
So that's assuming that the groundwater flows horizontally. Is that the way it actually works?
It doesn't really have to do with the groundwater. It has to do with the effluent once
Right.
it gets into
But the effluent goes into the,
it filters down into the groundwater.
Right.
And this is simply to prevent any of the effluent from the leaching area.
Yeah, I understand that. It seems a little, I'm not an hydrologist, but it seems a little unusual that it would sort of just go horizontally and not hits the impervious barrier, doesn't go down and then come up again.
Well, that is the downhill side, right? I mean,
Isn't this all about the water table? Even the base of the terminal barrier, isn't that above the water
The base of the impervious barrier is predicated on the basement slab.
Yeah. But is that above the groundwater? If it is. then you
Yeah,
don't have
because
to-
otherwise the cellar
Yeah.
would be.
So you don't have to worry
Right,
about lateral flow, it's all, yeah. It's all gonna go
that
down.
would be a health department.
Yeah, I was just,
I just want to make sure I understand.
yeah, I'm just looking for clarification.
No, that's cool.
Yeah,
Yes,
so I wasn't able to get to the site, I've never been there, but I just wondered, it's interesting that there's standing water at certain seasons in this one low spot. Is there any wetland vegetation in that low spot?
There's a little bit around the edges. Most of where the low spot is lawn, but there's a little bit of plants that qualify as wetland vegetation around the edge.
Well, I don't know if regulatory wise we could protect it, but it sounds like potential breeding site for things like spadefoot toads.
Yeah, whenever we get a plan like this as potential vernal pool, I send it to wetlands, and then it's up to them whether or not they map it, but
Oh,
yeah.
So would we
I
have to
notify.
condition this approval by the wetland protection?
No, this is an RDA, but whenever we get these plans that show,
Yeah.
weird vernal pools, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
I send to the vernal pool people at
No,
at
DEP.
wetlands, and I send it to NHESP so that they're aware of it as well.
and the real,
Someone would have to come and document.
Yeah, and so, but they have it, I mean, who knows how they do it now? But every 10 years, they go through a list and go to sites and redocument all the
Okay.
wetlands, so.
So this, I mean, I haven't seen it, I shouldn't say, but it looks from the plan and what I've heard, it sounds like it has high potential to be general pool breeding site for, ephemeral breeding site for certain things.
Yeah. So
So and the land around it is naturally, what is it, a lawn around it?
it's a lawn, yeah.
Yeah.
But the backside is wooded.
Yeah. Okay.
I remember we were doing the I think that's a negative.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so, yes.
And yes.
Oh, I do have one more separate.
I'm sorry, we're going
For information, but it mentions loan, bringing in loan. And I just want to ensure that we have a lot of places in town where we have objected not being able to pay for it and sort of those opinion on materials used as well. So just want to ensure that due diligence is there to prevent that from happening.
Yeah. And I'll add that as a condition, John.
Thank you.
Good idea. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good work.
Thanks, Lana. Yeah.
All right. Next hearing is Town of Wellfleet in Cape Cod National Sanctuary, West Neck, Holdite, Bound Brook Islands, and the High Pass Roads, Way 672. SE 077-1602, amended order of conditions for Herring River Restoration Project for Mill Creek thin layer placement field study.
Is there anybody online that you want me to?
Yes, please. So Alex Patterson, Jeff Sanders, Grace Andrews. I don't know if Grace is there. She might.
She's here.
That's.
Sounds good.
That sounds okay. Okay. Good. And I have a few slides. We have a few slides. If
You can share.
I might be allowed to share screen. So good afternoon. My name is Carol Lilly, and I'm coordinator for the Herring Restoration Project. With me is Tim Smith, ecologist formerly with the Seashore, and now I practice consulting with Kids of Herring River. It's Kevin Kroger, geochemist. Biogeochemist, formerly with USGS, and now Sylvester and Yale University. Alex Patterson is with EA East. He's the design engineer for this project, and Grace Andrews is the executive director for Hourglass Climate, also a partner in this project. Of course, Jeff Sanders, chief of natural resources and science for the Cape Cod National Seashore. Christine Noviata, who Friends of Herring River, is also with us this afternoon. So we're going to just take a moment, if we might, to provide a brief introduction to this project and walk through the plans and talk a little bit about some of the specifics around the carbon and alkalinity benefits. And then certainly open this to any questions that you may have. Essentially, we are asking for an amendment to the order of conditions that was granted to the Herring River Restoration Project Phase 1, which was back in May of 2022. And which authorized a number of infrastructure projects that are necessary for the tidal restoration of Herring River. In that information and what has always been contemplated is that over time there would also be a need for manipulation of the marsh plain to augment and enhance our ability to achieve restoration objectives, largely because of the expanses of subsided marsh due to tidal restriction and degradation over many, many years. And so in the order of conditions, it was noted that as those plans came into focus, we would come back to the commission and discuss any necessary authorizations. You may recall fairly recently, we were before you for an amended order of conditions for another pilot project, which is a berm removal salt marsh restoration. This is kind of a partner project to that. These are pilot projects designed to test methods of restoring salt marsh elevation and achieving other restoration goals, helping us build a base of knowledge to further plan restoration activities on the marsh plain. So that's essentially the context for this. And so we put together a fairly detailed narrative and provided project plans. I'll just briefly touch on sort of our understanding of the considerations that are foremost for the commission in terms of whether or not to grant this amendment. And that would be based on the policy document provided by DEP, policy document 85-4, which outlines a number of factors for the commission to consider. First and foremost, has the project changed? To which we would say no. In fact, this is very consistent with the objectives of the project as proposed for the order of conditions, and is further detail on those secondary marsh activities that was not available at that time. This is within the 570 acre phase 1 restoration area within the order of conditions. So no, the scope of the project has not increased or would not increase with this project. And as far as consistency with relevant performance standards, as you may recall, this is an ecological restoration limited project, so there aren't specific performance standards, but this project meets all of the ecological restoration limited project provisions. We also note that the project was designed to be consistent with the guidance for thin layer replacement projects that's issued by Mass DEP, and is really part of our efforts to achieve and augment restoration goals. And is there a potential for increased adverse impacts to statutory interests? We would posit no. Again, the areas would be affected, but extraordinary measures will be put in place to protect against any adverse events. We will be adhering to all time of year restrictions, following construction best practices. These are all, of course, central to the order of conditions and the thin layer replacement guidance. And we will also be instituting baseline construction and post-construction monitoring, and have a corrective action plan should things not proceed as proposed. So we suggest to you that the project is consistent with those 4 questions that are outlined in the policy guidance and would qualify for an amendment to the order of conditions. In addition, we will be seeking an amendment to the water quality certification. That is also the approach we took with the berm removal and salt marsh restoration project. And we will be seeking authorization from U.S. Army Corps through the pre-construction notification process. So we have not taken those steps yet. We wanted to meet with you this afternoon and talk with you about your questions, and then we will promptly proceed with those other regulatory matters. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Tim to maybe provide a little bit more context and sort of the understanding of the purpose of this.
Great, thanks, Carol. Thanks for having us here today. So we want to just talk about why we're doing this project and where we're doing it. So the project site is on this map here. This is right at the mouth of Mill Creek. If you're familiar with the Heron River system, its tributaries and such. And one of the main issues, which has been mentioned in all of the regulatory filings and other information on the Heron River project, is a severe subsidence of the existing salt marsh. So when the dike was built in 1909 and ties were cut off from the system, it stopped sediment flow. It impacted the health of salt marsh vegetation. Sea level rose and Cape Cod Bay and the harbor. And so there's been a net lowering of the marsh surface in this 100+ years. So we go about restoring tidal flow, opening up the gates at the new Chiqueza Bridge. The existing salt marshes and the former salt marshes are going to be too low in the tidal prism to support Spartina-based habitat. So we think there's a really a strong need to address the subsided marshes by bringing in sediment from outside the system to build up elevation. And this has been mentioned in the initial environmental impact report. We met with folks at DEP numerous times about this, as the NEPA and other permitting documents were put together, and they suggested we take on small demonstration / pilot type projects to see how it works, to see how effective it is logistically, cost-wise, all the questions we might have about doing this kind of work before we take it on, in the dozens of acres, even hundreds of acres that need this kind of treatment. So we identified the small area in the yellow rectangle. The area overall is about a little more than 3 acres. We're actually working on 1.5 acres. That's just a small portion of that site. Figure 2 on page 9 of our submittal shows some information that kind of documents the subsidence, and we're looking into the explanation here, but it basically shows that if you let the salt water in, it's going to fill up these subsided areas. Some will come subtidal, they won't drain, or will be such a hydro period that vegetation won't survive. They may be intertidal, but they'd be mudflat. So we need to apply these techniques on a large scale. And so we have the burn project that we were here, I think, last November to talk to you about. That was one type of elevation augmentation sort of project. This is a different type, a true thin layer project where the amount of elevation change is quite small, about 6 inches in this case. So this is, referring to the figure 3 on page 13, has a little schematic of the current and future elevations relative to the current and future tide range. So the difference with what you might have heard about with typical thin layer projects is they're taking place in a marsh that's not tidally restricted. So there might be other issues going on with sea level rise or other problems that are causing that marsh to need elevation increase, but the tides are relatively stable. Here we're doing this, raising elevation in the context of also deliberately managing the tide range. So we have a tide gate management approach for the next couple of years. It's been approved by the town and the seashore that basically proposes to increase the tide range initially up to a mean high water of 1.8 feet. So that's called out on this diagram here. So this has all been designed to function and to support salt marsh vegetation within that period of managed hydrology, still restricted, still muted, but increased above the current tide range. So this is a kind of an interim step here to take advantage of increasing the tide range with this modest level of increase in elevation to see how it works. Once tides are restored to a greater degree, there'll need to be more elevation to conserve this marsh and other marshes over time. So this is just a first step in how we plan to go about approaching these subsided marshes. We think we'll learn a lot from doing this in this location. And so we have our monitoring plan laid out here, collecting lots of information about plant growth and sediment, build up some settling of material that's placed, hydrology, many other parameters being monitored as part of this. We also have the unique addition here of using the alkaline minerals to increase local alkalinity in the water, and Kevin was going to talk about that in a minute. So I think that's all I have to say. I'm going to turn it over to Alex when they get into design plans and approach we're thinking about how to construct.
Sure, thanks, Tim. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks. So my name's Alex Patterson. I'm a senior ecologist at EA Engineering, and we're the design firm working with the project team, basically to come up with the engineering and construction approach for this project. And as Carol and Tim mentioned, sort of the overall design objective is kind of twofold. One is to increase the elevation of a very low-lying salt marsh that is not likely to persist following the restoration of tidal flow within the Herring River through sediment placement. And the other is to do that in a way that facilitates data collection related to carbon capture, which Kevin is going to talk about in a moment. And so those are sort of the I guess two primary project goals that the design is trying to achieve. So on this slide, we're seeing kind of a close-up view of the project site. North is to the right, so the Herring River is on the top of the page, and Mill Creek is coming in just off the page to the right. The project area is about 2 acres in size overall, almost entirely located within this very low-lying section of salt marsh. It's has an average elevation of right around elevation 0. You can go to the next slide, Carol. So this is sort of the design that's reflected in the plans that were submitted with the request. And as I said, Kevin will sort of get into some of the details as to why exactly the design looks the way it does, but it's clearly more than just a typical sort of marsh sediment placement project. The overall sort of design concept is that the marsh area is going to be divided into 3 distinct cells using vertical barriers, which will be installed during the duration of the experimental study period. Each of those cells will be connected to the tidal waters of the Herring River by constructing a channel through the marsh. And then each cell will receive a different type of material treatment. So one of the cells will receive just pure Cape Cod sand sourced from an upland quarry. Nearby, another will receive a mixture of sand and ground limestone. And then the last one will receive a mixture of sand and ground olivine. As Tim mentioned, an average depth of between up to 6 inches. So the material will be placed within each cell. The channels will be excavated. The material that will be generated by excavating the channels will be beneficially reused outside of the cells in the vicinity of the work area to create nesting islands for salt marsh sparrows in accordance with the Mass DEP trio guidance. And then a system of sort of low elevation boardwalks will also be installed. Those are the brown lines that you see. And those are necessary to provide access for the researchers that will be collecting data at this site over the course of the study. So those will be installed basically to provide access by foot into each site during different tide conditions, and a platform for holding equipment will be installed within each cell. And then I think this is the last slide for me. So this is just sort of a wider overview. So we've rotated 90 degrees. So now north is facing up. This is basically just showing the wetland resource areas that are located within the project sites. As I said, almost entirely within salt marsh, which is the green. And so there will be some temporary construction access. We're expecting the contractor will need to use timber matting to prevent subsidence of the marsh. There's also the temporary access road will cross the coastal bank, which is located along the entire length of the river here in order to reach the salt marsh from an access road that already exists and was constructed as part of a previous project for the Mill Creek water control structure. So the contractor will use appropriate erosion controls, turbidity curtain during construction to minimize impacts to adjacent areas, but the work area will be almost entirely located within the salt marsh. I think I'm going to pass it over to Kevin to talk about a little more detail on sort of the science that's driving this project.
So for a long time now in the Herring River Restoration Project, there's been an interest in understanding what the carbon sequestration benefits will be of restoring the wetland. And conversely, what the increases in greenhouse gas emissions might be if the wetland were not restored. And in thinking about what the climate benefits are of the wetland restoration among the matrix of decisions that are going to be made for several years now going forward as the restoration proceeds. And in my previous role, I was at the USGS in Woods Hole for about 20 years. And my team worked in the Herring River to try to evaluate those questions beginning in 2015. And we were able to determine that there's quite a bit of benefit to doing this restoration in terms of carbon sequestration and reductions in methane emission that would occur without the restoration. And I'm told that being able to talk about and show what those climate benefits will be have been an important feature in the efforts to fund the broader restoration. So climate change mitigation is part of this project. There's a certain amount of benefit that we can get, broadly speaking, from blue carbon from salt marshes. But it's quite limited relative to the problem with excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And there's increasing activity globally to work on technologies to capture additional carbon dioxide. And there's a whole array of approaches proposed. In my previous role, I served on the White House Fast Track Action Committee to develop a research program for the United States on marine carbon dioxide removal. And so this is a suite of technologies for removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and safely adding them to the oceans. And this can include adding alkaline minerals to wastewater treatment plant effluents, all kinds of different technologies. I think the most promising, in my view, is to accelerate a natural process that occurs when we have higher CO2 concentrations in the biosphere. As CO2 concentrations go up, we have more CO2 dissolved into water, and that produces carbonic acid, a weak acid. So we have a generally slightly more acidic environment under high CO2 conditions. The Earth's surface has many different kinds of minerals that contain alkalinity. Alkalinity is the opposite of acidity. When alkalinity and acidity come together, they neutralize each other, kind of like matter and antimatter kind of disappear. So there's a significant benefit to this reaction that happens with carbonate minerals like limestone or silicate minerals like the salts or olivine. It takes a very long time, but over time, that increased reactivity removes CO2 from the atmosphere, converts it to a neutral compound called bicarbonate, shown as HCO3 minus in that diagram. HCO3 minus is a primary form of alkalinity in the oceans. It's extremely abundant in the oceans, and it resides there for many thousands of years. And so The concept with enhanced mineral weathering is to mine these materials, grind them into small particles, and then place them in environments where they will react more quickly than they would naturally. So this is a natural process with an idea to try to accelerate it and remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Several years ago, I started working on the concept that salt marshes could be a very good place to do this because salt marshes increasingly need sediment additions to raise their elevations, as has been talked about. And so there's an opportunity. We're managing sediments anyway. We're placing sediments in the environment to add minerals like limestone or a silicate mineral like olivine to that mix of materials added to a salt marsh. In most places, there's not enough sediment available in the coastal zone. There's a worldwide shortage of sediment in the coasts to do all of the elevation enhancements that we need in our wetlands increasingly. And so the other aspect of this is testing the idea of using upland material to raise the elevation of our wetlands. And if we are going to do that, we need to know which materials provide us with the most benefits, which materials are safe and may be beneficial to the marine environment. And so this diagram here shows what's proposed with a sediment addition to a wetland. In this case, that picture shows dredge material. In this case, we're not proposing to use dredge material, but instead normal quarried sand from the upland, and adding either olivine or basalt or limestone to that mix. This will increase the elevation of the system, and then over time, that mineral will gradually dissolve, reacting with the carbonic acid that's formed in the soil of the wetland. These are extremely high CO2 environments because the salt marsh plants concentrate the dilute CO2 in the atmosphere into a couple of orders of magnitude higher concentrations of CO2 in the soil. And so we think we'll get good reactivity. In fact, we've tested it. We know we'll get good reactivity in the soil. And this will enhance a natural alkalinity export process that happens in wetlands anyway, just due to the biogeochemistry in the soil. And that little inset showing the data with flux on the left side of that graph, right there, that's showing an example of the measurement technique that we've developed in collaboration with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution starting in 2012 for measuring the carbon and the alkalinity export from natural wetlands. And what we found, and others have found, is that somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of the carbon dioxide that's taken up, the net uptake by these wetlands from the atmosphere, doesn't store in the soil, even though there's a rapid rate of carbon accumulation in the soil. Instead, it's exported through tidal exchange. In these tidal creeks that you see in the salt marshes, there's a lot of carbon and alkalinity leaving those wetlands. And so if we want to understand what the climate impacts are of our actions in salt marshes, in restoration and conservation, we need to measure this flux as well. We think that since along with that carbon, there's a certain amount of alkalinity exported naturally, that some of that carbon will also remain dissolved in the ocean for a very long time. So I'm on the current revisions going on right now in the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, guidance to countries for developing their greenhouse gas emission inventories. And I'm introducing this topic there as well. And so we have to measure these exports. We need a tidal creek in order to measure them. People have been trying to measure these exports for about 60 years. We now finally have a method to do it, but we have to have a tidal creek to do it in. And so what we're planning to do here is use that same technique to measure the exports due to the alkaline mineral additions. And so the need, as Alex mentioned, the need for these partitions around the units is that they're very small. They're only a half acre each. And we have to constrain how much water comes onto the salt marsh and how much leaves through our tidal creek. And with very small units, that water would flow everywhere at high tide, and so we can't constrain the flows without the partitions. And I think that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you. So we happy to answer any questions the commission has.
I'd like to hear a bit more about the olivine and the potential for perhaps, if not, this research study won't provide much threat, but if you're doing this on hundreds of acres, what does that mean for the wildlife in the harbor? How are you going to model that? How do you measure it? I've been reading it, but my eyes kind of roll up in my head a little.
Yeah.
But I mean, oysters are filtered. They'll be filtering out the nickel, the cobalt, and perhaps retaining some of that. How do we evaluate the effect of what olivine might have on the oyster crop?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I'll say a couple of words, and then I might turn it over to Grace online, who knows a lot more about olivine than I do. But yeah, it's a very good question. I think the basic answer is we want to do it on a very small scale first and measure it extremely well, and then we can use those results on a per unit area basis to extrapolate to larger areas virtually. But yeah, the basic idea is start small, find out what the outcomes are, and in no sense are we proposing anything larger at this time.
So you're going to be isolating this area, right? So that it can't flow into the river. Is that correct?
No. It'll have, each unit will have a tidal creek, and then it'll have partitions so that when the flood tide fills up that wetland, that same water will come back out on the falling tide. So we can measure concentrations going in, concentrations going out, and we'll do that continuously for years.
I think Grace might be able to describe some other applications and marine settings and others that might be relevant here, Grace.
Grace, make me feel better about this.
Thank you guys all for having us. Just by way of background, I'm the executive director of a nonprofit research institute called Hourglass Climate that works on these kinds of approaches. But part of our prior work and some of the research that we have now published online, so it's all available for anyone who's interested. The question on oysters is important and on everybody's minds for anyone focused on the eastern seaboard of the United States. So part of the work we've done before was we leveraged another field trial that was done back in 2022, where the same material, olivine, was placed as part of a beach nourishment project. Oysters didn't naturally grow at that site. So what we did is we were very curious to know what would happen with oysters. We actually went out and we planted oyster bags along the coastline and left them there for about a year. And we measured them at multiple time points over the course of that 1 year period to look at, was there any impact across time? We measured things like their growth. One of the potential benefits here is that alkalinity may be able to support the growth of oysters. So it could be actually quite beneficial. But we're also interested in whether or not the oysters accumulated any trace metals. So again, that research is all available online. It's been peer review published. Everyone should go check it out. But the upshot is that we didn't measure any significant impacts to the oysters over that 1 year time period. So they were able to, if there was metal exposure, they were able to detoxify, and the levels of metals in those oysters stayed within natural variability. So that's kind of the upshot, and I think that's also a helpful case study or counterpoint for this project, because the oysters were sitting directly on the olivine, and that olivine was actually about a foot thick. So we're talking a lot more olivine, an oyster sitting literally directly on top of it. So this is like, and that's, so you can imagine this is sort of like a worst case scenario. Here, of course, we're talking about a much smaller amount of olivine and oysters that are obviously not directly at the project site. So to the extent that you can extrapolate those results to this project, it suggests that it will be safe.
There are oysters.
Just what Grace is talking about is referring to a reference, Jankowska, the second to last on page 37. That's the paper she's referring to. And I think there's a DOI there. You should be able to find it online, but if not, you can get copies for each review.
And I would note too that this topic obviously is of concern to the Shellfish Department. We've been working very closely with them on this. In fact, I think we're meeting again tomorrow to answer any questions they have on the monitoring component of that. They've had quite a bit of input. So that's an ongoing conversation.
Because there are living oysters just in the river, right? They're not edible, but
They're harvestable, right?
Are you going to be taking a sample of those before and during to see? Because that would be the most quickly affected.
Yeah, so we're working with the Cape Cod Conservation District to set up a monitoring program. They already do SPAC recruitment and other monitoring similar to what Barbara and John have worked on before. So they're going to be installing, SPAC collectors, basically trying to replicate the whole industry of, the whole growth of the aquaculture industry and be able to quantify effects at each life stage, right adjacent to the site. We're also, if you notice on the plans, the three areas, the olivine will be the most distant landward or upstream. So it's a little bit further just in space from the bridge and the harbor as well. And we don't expect any detectable effects, beyond the bridge.
I think you touched on it, that there are other, even if they're not holding the cobalt and nickel within them, it might affect the reproduction of it or the growth rate, right? Are those things that you'll be monitoring?
Yeah.
What will you be using as a are you going to be using oysters from farther upstream as a control, or how are you going to tell if that particular oyster bed is being affected by any of its?
So yeah, good question. So each of the units will have this tidal creek that we're proposing to get introduced into the platform, and that's important because it provides us with a place to measure everything, all of the exports, and it concentrates what's leaving that wetland into a smaller area. And so we can look at the fauna occurring just outside the tidal creek of the olivine treatment versus the limestone treatment versus the control, which has sand. So I think that will provide a really good comparison. And our colleagues at the Conservation District have a very solid plan for analyzing the animals collected on the SPAC collectors for all the features that are relevant to a commercial operation. And so they're very familiar with those operations, and will be able to inform very directly whether or not there are any detriments or benefits.
Let's wind the clock forward. Let's say that this is successful and you determine that olivine is really an advantage, and you go and do a widespread installation of this tops or soil combination. How long will that last in the environment before it's dissipated?
We're thinking on a time scale of a couple of decades. Grace may have more to say about that, but that's been in the conversations I've been in, that kind of time scale. It's a gradual dissolution.
Right. Well, I'm sure better minds than mine have thoroughly looked at this, but I just needed to.
Are there any other shellfish questions? Because Nancy Savannah does have her hand up online. Might be a good time Do you want to let her talk now while we're talking about
let's
shellfish?
just listen.
Okay.
I just want to mention that there's no commercial aquaculture here at all, so we're talking about the wild fishery.
Yeah.
In the Herring River, you're talking. Yes, I understand that. But it flowed, it falls down.
Looking at how this is farming. I think
I mean, that presumes that whatever is in the water and whatever it's, that might be, it'll be flushed out twice a day.
Completely diluted.
And those are all things that this is why we're doing it on a small scale.
Right.
So that we get all of these answers that you're talking about before we ramp it up. Hi, Nancy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Very loud.
Okay. I don't know why my camera's not working. Sorry.
Oh,
It's okay.
So I thought I read somewhere that the shellfish experimentation is only going to happen in year 2, but I thought our conversations talked about doing it immediately. Can you just clarify? Like right from the get-go, I thought that so we are collaborators with Cape Cod Conservation District and the project to conduct some studies, I guess, a study within the study by placing spat collectors. We were going to do oysters on the bottom, quahogs, and maybe like a rack or a condo with some shellfish in it to mimic a grant, even though the grants are on Egg Island or our grant, in front of the yacht club, just down river. But this was to, collect information about the olivine. And I guess my understanding was that was going to begin right away. But I thought I read somewhere that it said year 2. So can I just get a little explanation?
Yeah, Nancy, this is Kevin. Good question. So, for a little bit of background for everyone else, he collaborated with Grace and with Patrick and others at the Conservation District and myself on a grant proposal a few months ago to try to enhance what we do on the shellfish monitoring. Wasn't funded, and so tomorrow we have a meeting with Nancy, Patrick, and others to flesh out in more detail what we can do with the funds that are at hand, what the best monitoring plan is, given people's capacity. The Conservation District is quite on board with a robust effort on this, and I'm not sure where the year I think refers to looking at the wild population in the sediments adjacent, with the idea that if there are any metals accumulations in those animals, it can take a while to be detectable. But with the spat collectors, et cetera, I say starting right away.
I didn't. It's hard to hear in this room. So just are we starting? I know we have that meeting, I think at 9 tomorrow. Are we starting this immediately in the beginning of the experiment, or is it happening in 2028?
Immediately.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
I take it that I mentioned reproduction but also resistance to diseases could be altered, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the introduction of heavy metals in the water. So I hope that the study will not show up in problems, but
yeah,
it's a broad issue. I mean, you're injecting something into the water that wasn't there historically.
Right.
And you're hoping that you'll be able to model what the effect will be, but I just want to make sure that all the things that could go wrong are being at least interpreted or examined.
Yeah.
It may be hard on disease resistance, but
would think disease resistance would show up in growth and just overall success of the animal, right?
Probably,
If they do in condition index or something like that, it would show up, so I don't know what they're doing. There are a number of ways that could show up.
But it could easily be, just to be clear, we're not saying olivine is the best answer necessarily. That's why we're testing limestone alongside it. Limestone has less alkalinity pound for pound, but it also doesn't have any of the metals. So
part of the data is also is concentrations in the tissue as well. So whether they're, I don't know how to test resistance to diseases in oysters, but we are measuring the actual concentrations in the tissue.
Yeah.
Whether that's causing anything or not,
Right.
I don't know.
Okay.
So this is the area you're looking at, which is west of the structure we've already built on Mill Creek, right? Significantly left, like we're right on the Herring River.
Right.
And that is salt marsh now.
Correct.
And you're putting how many inches fill?
Up to 6 inches.
What happens to the salt marsh that is?
It'll be happier salt marsh.
So it will not, that 6 inches will not.
We've done this with thicker levels of sand up to 30 centimeters. And the Spartina grows right through it.
Okay.
And without doing anything, when we open the gates of Chiquezet, that marsh is going to be drowned.
Right.
And we're going to lose the vegetation, lose the sediment, and get even lower.
Okay.
Could I just sort of follow up slightly? So I looked through it, I didn't see it, maybe it's there and I missed it. How many cubic feet? We're talking about an acre and a half, 6 inches thick. How many cubic feet are we talking about? 30,000?
400 cubic yards in each
400
half acre area, so 1,200 cubic yards total.
as a max, it's actually going to be a little less than that, I think. Yeah.
You say 4 cubic yards?
400 cubic yards in each half acre area.
For context,
That's not that.
It's 6 inches thick, that's the important part.
Yeah, and you,
Area.
and when you think about like beach nourishment, a lot of people have beach nourishment that's 800 cubic yards, so. You
Yeah, but it still has to get in.
Right.
It has to be trucked in.
Yeah, well, that's why we picked this location, because the new road for the Mill Creek Dike was constructed. It's sort of a happy coincidence, or a coincidence anyway. So we have easy access to the bank. So they will have to build a road down the coastal bank to the marsh, but before it was all woods, so it'd be very difficult to get in there or anywhere. This is a relatively easy salt marsh to get.
Well, maybe Carl can remember. Yeah, part of that access route goes across Wellfleet Conservation Trust land, and you have an easement. Was that specific to the Mill Creek structure, or just any use that you want to have it?
I think they worked around it. Like,
It's access to the structure. I don't think there's any limitation on the use of the road. We can certainly check that language, but this would.
I think at the minimum, you should at least tell them that there's going to be, what, 1,200 yards of stuff that's going to be trucked across the trust land.
So let me go back to that. I mean, that access road ends at the structure. And yet you're gonna have to move that material from the structure to your site, and that's not next door, that's quite ways away.
Was maybe I could just put that figure
Yeah,
back
Alex
up.
talked about that.
Yeah, I think it's about maybe 150-foot kind of spur off of the existing access road that would need to be constructed across the coastal bank to reach the edge of the marsh. And then from there, it would be a timber mat, low pressure construction equipment to reach the project site.
Be cutting down trees.
Yes, there would need to be some tree removal within the proposed access road alignment.
Like this.
They do say in their narrative that they're gonna restore after. Only way to access it is by a dredge in there, the only way to put the material there in general is to do it from an upland way. You know, lots of times when they do this, as we saw, they can do it from a dredge where they just dump it on, but that's not an option up here. If you have dredge material, then you can't even move the dredge through.
Also a guardrail now along there. But it's not continuous, and there happens to be either a gap in the guardrail or easily removable piece of the guardrail that goes right from the road down the bank to the marsh. It's mostly like much thinner shrubs. It's not really trees, but you know, it'll be temporarily disturbed for this purpose, and it'll be restored and grow back and be fine.
That would be a condition, I assume, that it would be restored.
Yeah, and the park will issue a special use permit for this, for the contractor, so they'll have that same provision to restore back to original conditions.
The olivine contains nickel, cobalt, and chromium. Did you test upstream or adjacent existing sediments for those same metals?
We measured it in surface water.
That's not what I asked.
Yeah, no, we don't have samples of the ambient sediment for that analysis. We do have some data from down in the harbor that Tim was aware of from a past dredging operation.
Well, I think that might be useful to your study if you took a look at that. And also, how much?
Wasn't there metals analysis for anything else upstream?
Yeah, there's other data with a sort of full suite of contaminant testing.
Comparable areas
for other
within the
purposes.
floodplain, I think. Well, you know.
Yeah, you've collected right in Mill Creek there, and that's been done more recently as well. So there's other places that have some sediment testing for the usual suite of pesticides and metals and PCBs and things like that. We just haven't explicitly sampled this area, though we have explicitly sampled recently the olivine that's stockpiled for this purpose. We don't have those lab results back yet, but we will provide those when we get them. We hope to have them today, but they haven't come back from the lab yet, but we will supply those when we have those.
Do you remember, are there comparable levels or?
I don't remember. No, and there's more recent data that I haven't seen that Tim and others know of.
Yeah, and I don't know off the top of my head on their levels either.
How much iron is in the olive?
Grace can answer that better than I could.
I don't have the exact concentration, but it is there is iron in it. Comparable with what you find in other minerals that you get in naturally occurring sediment. But that will be part of the report that we get back as well.
A lot of iron and sediment natively.
Yeah.
Consider what might happen, how the iron might affect the plan here.
Yeah, the iron adds a very small amount of acidity that is counter to the alkalinity that's released from the silicate mineral weathering, and so it's a very tiny offset relative to a very large alkalinity source.
Okay.
Otherwise, iron's not really, my knowledge, is not really a concern. Moderate levels in the environment, especially in the salt marsh where there's very high levels already.
Well, might be a good idea if you're going to put down 400 cubic yards of olivine sand to test the material for iron.
Yeah,
so that would be part of what we were getting back. We just don't have it today.
Oh.
It would be 200.
And just to clarify, so when I said those yardage figures before, that was the cumulative for the mixture. So It's actually 200 yards of olivine. It's really mixed with 200 yards of sand.
Okay,
To make
well,
it 400
400 yards then. But I mean, iron is not a priority pollutant metal. It's not an MCP priority pollutant. And there's really nothing in your laundry list here that would imply that you're testing for that. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, so and just so you know, when we measure metals in tissues and in waters as well, we get a huge suite of metals results, including iron. Yeah. So we will be monitoring that.
I understand, but I'm just going to say this one more time. It's useful to know in advance what you're dealing with. So test the stuff.
Yeah, and you're right. And we do have data from previous analyses of olivine from this same source, but we just want to get we had a company come and collect samples from the olivine that we have ready for this project for exactly what you're talking about. And that'll be the report that will be passed along as soon as it's ready.
To
you.
Yes. I have a couple of questions that probably not my business, but I'm curious before I ask some questions for which I have some responsibility. The carbon export in the creek, is that both dissolved organic carbon and inorganic carbon? Okay. All right. Also on the spring mill design, I just wondered, you're going to be digging these creeks and they're going to affect water movement. And I wondered if you considered putting in a control where you put in a creek, but you don't add any material in the area. Because the creek itself might alter geochemistry within that unit. I don't want to cause trouble, but I just want to mention ask.
Yeah. It would be a good idea, but we're using most of the available salt marsh already. It's extremely limited.
Yeah.
And
I just want to put it out there. I don't want to take a lot of time on that, but I just on the. It wasn't clear to me in reading the narrative exactly how you're going to get all this stuff out there and spread. Could you explain how that happens, just in a more detailed way?
To some extent,
Well, I guess
good.
We're so what's funding this is money through the Park Service that's gone in agreement to the Center for Coastal Studies. So they've been managing contracts for EA and they're holding money for the construction. And we're approaching it as design build. So we have a contractor who's been involved during the whole design process for this exact reason, to get that kind of feedback for those kind of logistical issues, how to do this. So one, and we haven't, nothing's been decided, but the olivine right now is up at the Highland Center in Truro. And across the street from the Highland Center, there happens to be a sand pit, commercial sand pit. Yeah. So we think the sand might come from there and it might be mixed where the olivine is and then just trucked down as needed. Yeah. So we won't be bringing a huge stockpile to the Mill Creek Road.
Right. Sorry to interrupt, but what I really want to know is how this is going to be spread up on the site. Like, I know you're going to use low ground pressure equipment.
Yeah.
There's going to be like a front end loader somehow.
Well, the company we're working with does salt marsh restoration 24/7 is all they do. They have all sorts of specialized equipment to work on the marsh, to grade sand on the marsh. That's things they do all the time.
Yeah.
They have these little tracked dump body machines.
Mm.
They can hold up to 10 yards, can go up and down the hills.
Mm.
They can have a blade on them. So that's kind of why we wanted them involved.
And they can spread it uniformly to that depth.
Yeah, they have GPS on their blades and things like that.
Okay, I have some other questions.
So I'm confident they'll figure it out.
Okay. I have there's one thing in your introduction here on page 9 that talks about, so the first paragraph says that the accumulation of organic was slowed and halted. The system has been lacking inputs from marine derived sediments. Essentially, the marsh elevation has been stunted by restricting tides. Are you talking about this specific little chunk of marsh? Or are you talking about Herring River in general?
That's just general Herring River.
Okay, because as Kevin knows, the biggest loss in peat volume is due to pore space collapse and organic decomposition, especially pore space collapse.
Right.
So this is a little incorrect here. I think that should be corrected for the record, so we don't propagate misinformation. Pore space collapse is huge in Herring River, and it's clear in the bulk density and the organic content.
As opposed to limited sediment deposition.
Yeah,
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
So this is talked about a little bit in our appendix. The little study we did looking at bulk density in the gut and in this marsh. So we captured that a little bit.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, on figure 3. It looks like the marsh will drain at low tide at both the end of year 1 of the project of phase 1. Both at the end of year 1, where you're going to make those, that one adjustment and those 8 openings. And also it will drain at the end of phase 1. So is this drainage still insufficient to sustain plant growth in that marsh? Because it is going to drain at low tide.
At the tide range all the way to the right, the phase 1 tide range. Is that what you mean?
I'm looking at all of these. There are 3 different tide ranges. There's current conditions, is end of phase 1, year 1, and then there's the end of phase 1, and they all show low tide well below the marsh surface. So I'm just asking, is that insufficient to maintain salt marsh?
This is 1 year, this phase 1. So that presumes the surface stays the same, for one thing.
Yeah.
So without intervention, and even with maybe this intervention, it still could collapse more.
Yeah.
So that surface could be going down. That line representing the surface is a little bit deceptive.
Yeah.
Because that's not static.
I understand too that you're getting back from the creek bank, you're getting waterlogging even now, even though it's tight in the creek, the water drops down.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is just kind of average representative condition as well. So there's more variation on this.
Yeah. Okay. Only one other thing on page 14 is at the bottom project sequence. The second bullet, is that right? I think it says November 27th to April 28th. Shouldn't it be November 26th to April 27th?
It's going to be held for 2 years.
Yeah, so this is the expected time frame for reaching that mean high water threshold. So what this means is in November 27, we're going to begin reaching that.
26. I think it's a typo.
So November 26th.
I understood it was going to start this year.
Right, this year to
so this should be
to next spring.
Yeah, that 27 should be 26.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I guess that's all I have.
We need another proof. And have to need proof.
So the gate's going to be open during that first year to become the maximum high tide. Is that right?
That's the first, so the first approved policy is to go from 0.24 mean high water level to 1.8 in Lower Herring River. And that's going to occur roughly, we're still working on the exact sequence and number and timing of these adjustments, but roughly from mid-November till spring.
Okay.
And then that level will be held for 2 more years.
So I went out to the old White House Bridge Road, the dike that's out there, and it's now been channeled. Are you going to be taking more of that dike out, or is it just the channel?
It's High Toss Road.
Yeah, High Toss Road.
Yeah, that's been removed where it might be lowered further. I'm not sure if they reached the elevation that they're supposed to get for removing the road.
But you're talking about where it's trenched out.
No, the whole road.
The whole thing.
Well,
the whole road where it crosses the marsh.
Right.
What we call the causeway.
Right. Causeway.
From way 672 to the river.
Right.
Yeah, so that has mostly been excavated. We're not sure if they've gotten to the elevation they're targeting. I think they did a survey. I don't know,
Right,
you know?
they would be grading a few
Yesterday they did the
inches
survey.
in the road. It wouldn't, the channel is the channel. It's been
Right,
constructed.
Right, so they may shave off some more.
Exactly.
Yes.
And what would be the purpose of that? To allow high water to go over it?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a major kind of speed bump, especially for drainage. So our hydrodynamic model shows that if you took out the culvert and left the road, at flooding tide, the culvert, the width of that channel without the culvert conveys a lot of water upstream. But then when it wants to go out, the causeway creates a restriction and it impedes that drainage. And then that's why with the Duck Harbor overwashes, like Boundbrook Road flooded because it can't get that out there. So we thought just removing the road entirely. And this was vetted like over a couple of years with the town and the park. And all the stakeholders.
I was just wondering, because I was under the impression that the causeway would be removed, but you're going to be slicing it off until you get it down to where it.
No, it's supposed to match the marsh on either side.
Oh.
And there's
That's probably a foot and a half or so, is that a taller or more?
You've been out there, it's been cut down. I don't know if it's been cut down enough.
I just noticed there's no big potholes.
So
Yeah, and I think we should focus on this because we can always ask these questions at a later time, but let's focus on what we have at hand right now. Otherwise, we're just gonna keep.
What do they need from us on this?
Approval of the amended order of conditions.
Yeah, but Nancy, are there any other comments from the commission? Because Nancy has her hand up, so we can let her speak once more. Nancy?
Thank you. So I think that everybody received the comments from the Division of Marine Fisheries today. And, you know, we're working in partnership. We're trying to be, you know, positive about this, but we do have trepidations, of course, because of the presence of, you know, altering the current hydrology, if you will, in these three plots, and if that olivine could potentially get taken up by shellfish. So we're willing partners, but we have trepidation, and I think everybody on the team knows that. But the comments that were submitted by the Division of Marine Fisheries, you know, we share their concerns. So even though we didn't submit official comments for this public hearing, I just want to go on the record saying that we do share DMF concerns here.
Get that letter.
Say that again?
When did you get that?
129 today. And then I do have one question, and that was like in our original discussions, my understanding was that if there, you know, like the DMF notes like that the trigger, like what would trigger the corrective actions and in terms of the heavy metals. So it's under monitoring, page 4, monitoring plan, the first bullet. And just a better understanding, you know, where would the trigger be? Like if it's right there at the site, or if it's anywhere else, or if it doesn't matter, it would be anytime a certain level is detected, then that would be a trigger. I would want to have a little bit more clarification around that as well. And back in the very beginning, when we were talking about it, my understanding was the corrective action was going to be to remove the olivine. And then on a recent call or something, that was not the case. So maybe due to expense, I can't remember. But can you just go into that for a minute? Like, what would the corrective action be if we determine that if during the monitoring program, we determine that heavy metal like nickel is accumulating in the shellfish? What is the corrective action, and will the olivine be removed?
So this is all laid out on page 34, on the bottom of the page. It talks about detection of nickel in water, sediment, or tissue. Well, we don't here have specifics of exactly where that would be, does then go on to mention steps that would be taken, those detections, things are detected. So talk with Nancy and Johnny about they removing material, and I was under the impression we agreed that that would cause more harm than good. When they're trying to actually remove, you would tear up that entire marsh, lose all the elevation that was gained, you with the sand along with the olivine. So that just seems like not a good idea. Now these other steps that would be taken, if some concerning level of nickel is wherever that might be, to include having sand on site ready to put extra sand on top of the olivine place. We would incorporate some kind of flow structure like stop logs out of this creek to keep the water from going in. So low tide, put in some flashboard stop logs, keep the water from going in. So off the exchange, the material within fell. So there's these 5 points here that we appreciate if action happened.
A little bit to that. So the primary monitoring point is intended to be right at the mouth of the tidal creek, the interface wetland and estuary, and it's where we expect for water falling tides. And the trigger levels would be either the acute or chronic exposure levels, levels for chronic days, and so those are what we'd be monitoring for. It may be useful to know a little bit more about how this dissolution of process will occur at the olivine. So if you have some crushed and ground up olivine in small particle sizes to a fine sand, the whole range of particle sizes. Smaller particles have very large surface area, dissolve much quicker, and they dissolve immediately within on time scales of days. And then there's a slower rate. The other feature is that it's temperature dependent, so it's much faster in the summer than it is. So there is an exceedance you would expect it to be either right away, early, when those fine materials are breaking down. I think that's unlikely because temperature will be low. Probably be very slow. Then the other time when we might get maximal rates would be that first summer. And so if we did need to take this corrective action, which we really don't think we will, it would be temporary. Basically, we want to get through that summer and then open it up again and come back down, allow the wetland to recover, so that we would expect lower rate.
I'm sorry to say that it's like you guys are underwater. It's hard to hear. So we can just talk about this tomorrow. I hate that room. We have Shellfish Advisory Board meetings in it too, but it's really hard to hear when you're online if you're not right up next to the microphone. Sorry, but thank you for trying.
From the narrative, it looks like the olivine was used in a couple of other projects, one on Long Island and one in North Carolina. I guess these weren't tidally involved, they were just, what were they?
They're tidal, yeah.
They were tidal, so what was the outcome there in terms of the heavy metals that we're concerned about?
So that's what Grace addressed earlier.
All right, that study was what she addressed, and they didn't see any. I also want to emphasize that this is a sort of a test plot, and maybe the other treatments are going to work just as well, and maybe we won't have to worry about this when this type of treatment is going to be deployed throughout the system. I'm hoping that's the case. Because I'm not crazy about minerals in the water.
So following what you said, the only reason we're testing olive one is the assumption that the limestone won't be adequate. Is that correct?
No.
I mean, why would we take the risk if limestone does the job?
Well, I think a good question. So broadly, I would suggest that if we think that we need to use upland materials for raising the elevation of wetlands, and I would suggest that we're going to have to in the coming decades, then we should test a range of materials, so we know what works, what doesn't work, what's safe, what's a risk, what might be beneficial. So I think it's very useful to compare them side by side, the olivine and the limestone. I do think the limestone will work. It just doesn't contain as much alkalinity per kilogram as the olivine does.
And Grace, could you talk to the special nature of olivine and why it's particularly used in these situations? You explained that well before.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, so a key point here is what Kevin said in terms of the potential benefits of these materials. They both produce alkalinity, which, again, can be beneficial potentially for shellfish. Olivine has a lot more of that, right? So about like 4 times as much actually. So it has a lot more potential to be beneficial as well. But the other reason is because olivine, basically the alkalinity that you get from that, there's basically no way to sort of undo the benefit for the climate with it. So it's basically kind of like a one-way reaction. When you use limestone, you can kind of think of it as like limestone is also, I mean, that's what carbonate. It's what makes up, the actual shells of shellfish, right? So if you kind of dissolve some carbonate in this process, but then you use that same stuff later down as it transports down the river to form the shell of an oyster, you haven't done anything for the climate, really. You've like dissolved something and then reformed it. And so olivine doesn't have that problem. Olivine is like a one-way reaction where you're definitely going to benefit the climate when you produce that alkalinity. So it's a much more effective tool for the carbon removal side. And as I said, the potential benefits for oysters and such is significantly greater. So it's, in my opinion, worth understanding if the trace metals are actually a risk, particularly in light of some of the existing data I've already pointed to, which suggests that they shouldn't be, right? So it's worth finding out.
I mean, about the limestone dissolving and then being captured.
Yeah, they precipitated by shellfish, right?
Yeah. Okay. So the idea would be is that the olivine is 4 times as much. So you always just take out 1, but there's still 3 units of alkalinity that I'm struggling to understand.
Versus taking out the calcium.
And the olivine's releasing magnesium. Primarily.
Okay. Surpassing that.
Chemistry's different.
Yeah, okay.
Is Nancy still?
Are you still wanting to talk, Nancy?
She said tomorrow morning when they.
No,
Okay.
thanks.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
You said this is already stockpiled up at the Highland Center, the olivine Center, so I can go up and have a look at it.
Theoretically, it's behind a locked gate.
Who would I contact?
Jeff Sanders,
And he is.
the natural resource chief at the park.
We can, Carol and I can work the schedule.
Yeah, we can
something out.
facilitate that.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions or concerns?
I'd move that we approve the amended order of conditions for Town of Wellfleet and Cape Cod National Seashore for this project.
Second, Michael. Yes.
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 And
Thank you very much, and we'll be in touch to set something up. Okay, thanks, Carol. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
discussion. We're going to take a moment to see the other ourselves here before going on.
If you're taking a physical chemistry. It seems so hard.
Okay. We have two related, we have essentially a team, two people, two groups are proposing the same, but it's one solution that covers two different pieces of property. So we're going to cover both at the same time. The first one is Laura M. Prager, Shared Trust, F/B/O, whatever that means, 376 King Philip Road, map 35, parcel 184, SE 077-1595. Amended order of conditions to modify current living shoreline to encapsulate existing stones into gabions along the base of the installation. The second one is Trust Share FBO, Margaret A. Payne, 400 King Philip Road, map 35, parcel 185, SE 0771599, with the same goal, to amend the order of conditions to modify the current living shoreline to encapsulate existing stones into gabions along the base of the installation. The commission went there this morning and surveyed the damage that's been done and the current condition of the bar rolls, which are pretty badly beaten up. Here we are. Who would like to?
I can start off.
All right. Can you identify yourself, please?
Yes, John Mark Burgess of Shorefront Consulting. I've been involved on these two properties for these probably 15 years or more, and then another 5 years before that when I was an employee of the company that started it out. So there's lots of history, and I still see some members on the board that were with me way back when too. So this has been an ongoing 20-year struggle to stabilize this thing. So the living, my letter is the same for both projects because we're doing the same thing, correct? And it pretty well explains what we want to do, but to be concise, so that the living shoreline worked and the fiber rolls definitely have worked. The bank has been stabilized, the plants look great. All that goal of the project has been accomplished. And I want to be clear to say that before we did anything for the bank, when I compared two different surveys, there was over 800 yards of material coming out of the bank naturally every year. And we were supplementing that with 200 1 year, 400 1 year, and 800 yards 1 year. In doing so, we reached a tipping point where there was too much sand being introduced into the system and the shellfish were complaining rather than the fish themselves, but we know what I mean. And so once the living shoreline was installed, the upper part of the bank, like I said, I think that goal has been accomplished 100%. The bottom continues to struggle. You know, it's a difficult environment. It's been repaired. The fiber rolls have been repaired several times. We're not proposing any change to the fiber rolls. So all we want to do now, the cobble that is left at the base is unconsolidated. It's just strewn around. It's providing protection, but takes up a lot of room. And the proposal in front of you is to amend the order to really simply take the stones that are there and encapsulate them in gabions, which are essentially like lobster traps. That's a layman's way I can say it. And arrange them along the base. Same height as the original living shoreline. It's going to occupy half the space. So you're going to get more coastal beach. We're also about a year or so ago, maybe 2 years, time passes, we were required or requested by the commission to remove stones that were larger than 1 foot in diameter. That was done. We're further going to reduce the size of the stone by removing stones that are larger than 8 inches. And Seth believes that there's still enough cobble left to do what we need to do and perhaps not even have to bring in any additional stone. We won't know until we get there, but there's enough there to do it. So they're going to be consolidated into these cages, if you will. The cages are staggered, and they can be wound around in undulations in the bank and the beach. So all that cobble that is like 10 feet out in front is going to be consolidated and pushed back. So you're going to gain coastal beach. It's going to be a neater installation. And I know of one Gabbard installation in Chatham. It's been there 30 years. And even the PVC coated wire hasn't degraded at all. And oysters actually attached to it. One of the reasons we arrived at this solution, we hired an outside company, Norman Doe Associates, to do an analysis on oyster castles and things like that, which I understand might have been tried in Wellfleet also somewhere else. At any rate, the area is too high. So the basic premise that the report came back was that oysters wouldn't survive because they're not wetted enough. Its elevation's too high. So if it was lower and they were wetted 50% of the tide, they'd have a chance to colonize. So we're not able to use that option. So this is basically what we have left, and we're just using the materials that are there, reconsolidating them, and it should require little to no maintenance once they're reorganized. Fiber rolls, of course, will continue to need ongoing maintenance. And then to keep the 2 installations the same, this is from Mordecai and Prager. So the Prager side, that installation was a little bit lower, and it's suffered more damage from overtopping. So we just want to make all of it the same across. So we'll add 2 more rows on the Prager property so that everything matches. That's basically the simplest form of what we're asking to revise the project.
So you're using these gabions as a toe, behind which will be the slope of these bar rows. Is that right?
The choir rolls are staying where they are. So the living shoreline was placed under the choir rolls. So we're just going to replace the living shoreline with the gabions, and then fiber rolls continue from about mean high water up where they are now.
Okay. Well, when I was out there this morning, I just saw a bunch of rolls that were really decomposed, and so I don't really have a good feel for how high on the cliff they would be stacked.
I'm going to let Stephen explain the mechanics of the installation, and then because they've been doing the repairs over the years, so I'm going to let these 2 guys handle that. I'm going to turn it over to them.
All right.
Do that.
For the record, commissioners, my name is Duke Blitzko. I'm a technical director at Wilkinson. I have less history than I would use to gentlemen, but I've been out there. I've reviewed the design. Steve is our senior project manager, Steve Ranch. We're not proposing any Halloween on this project, so you're not going to look like that. Can I show you? We just blew up the section. If you look at the section rather than the 2 plans, you'll get a really good understanding. This is kind of what you have, but this is the plan that was built. This is the proposed plan, the colors. But this section really shows, this profile really shows what we're doing. These are the existing fiber rolls or port machines that are in place now with a stabilized bank above. So we're proposing to keep those. There are some that have disintegrated that have to be replaced, but the 7 that are in here will remain. And it's this toe piece that we're protecting. And as he said, we're basically just taking this cobble reinforced marsh, which is here, that degraded and left these larger cobbles, and we're replacing it with these 4 stacked cages, which are PVC coated material, of a certain thickness. We've used them on multiple projects. We actually put together. We've done this application on many projects on the Cape and the Islands. We'll use one case study. sent out some photographs here that you can look at and Steve can talk about it. But we're basically keeping everything from here up and we're just replacing the cobble reinforced marsh with these stack systems.
Okay, so is that at high tide is showing that
It's like high tide is right here at 4.5, so it actually comes up to here. So the bottom one, these are a foot by foot by foot. The bottom one will always be buried. And then sometimes you'll see the exposure of 3 feet and then pretty much 6 inches or a foot at the very top during high tide. Yeah, and we have, the photographs are actually really good and we can show you those. And in terms of doing this, what we like to do is the stuff that you saw out there today is a safety issue. So we'd first like to remove that, get it off site. It's the cables, the helical piles, and anything left over. Then taking out the larger cobbles, anything over 8 inches, and then installing these and then making sure everything is secure.
Are you digging in, trenching to put in the lower steps of these?
So the cobble already goes into the beach somewhat. It will be trenched in somewhat. In the goal is to keep the lowest roll above mean high water.
Right.
The one they don't like to be saturated all the time.
Right. No, I understand that. I was just wondering,
maybe 6 inches to a foot would have to be excavated.
And that will be from the area that now has the cobble.
Yeah,
correct. Yeah.
A simple-minded question and then maybe something more serious. So you say anything that is 8 inches diameter or greater. So you want to qualify that because you say just greater than. Right, so 8 inches you're going to take away.
8 inches and greater that's out there right now.
Yeah, that's not what it says, but that's what you're intending.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then you're saying 6 inches or less you're going to put into these gabions. So what about the 7 inches?
I think it's 4 to 8 inches is what goes in the gable.
Oh, well,
anything greater than 8 inches.
Then you want to change that because that's not what it says.
Sure, it might be that.
We're gonna work with the stones that are there, so it's not a perfect. If you specify too much, then you can't do what you wanna do. So it's just a range, but nothing.
That's fine, it's just, you're.
I think because the commission is also concerned because when there's already been a problem on that site with the size of the rocks. So I just want to I think Mike just wants to make sure that there won't be a problem this time.
Exactly. And the more serious question, this is classed as a hard structure? These gabions?
Yes.
Okay, because there are regulations about hard structures in front of houses that were not built before.
Correct.
So you're asking for an exemption from that?
Yes, and we can give examples of other communities where we've done that in post 1978 houses.
I was gonna say something similar. I remember attending a workshop about erosion and protecting and coastal engineered structures and gabions. Well, one of the examples that they usually structure.
I think the major difference is we're only proposing it as the toe. We're not bringing it up and using it in place of the existing fiber rolls or core machines, which are planted right now.
But I think that it could have the same negative effect because if you look at your own photos here, I mean, I've been monitoring this area for 25 years and so much diamondback terrapin nesting habitat has been lost here because of the erosion that's occurred as a result of these structures. I think that it's going to have the same negative impact as a rock revetment. I mean, it is now.
It's going to erode out from behind it.
It is already doing
Are you characterizing this as a restoration? It's not a living shoreline is a restoration of habitat.
This is
loss.
Modification.
It's basically a repair.
Okay, because it seems to me that I agree with Barbara that the resource that we should be trying to protect is the coastal bank and the supply of sediment coming from the coastal bank, and not a constructed marsh with a hard structure seaward of it. I really don't see this is different than a hard structure. The coastal beach, will it be any vegetation on top of the sand or in the sand on top of the fiber rolls?
There already is.
There is.
Do you mean the bank above it, or?
Well, I mean, it sounded like Mr. Burgess was describing that as an additional coastal beach.
Does anybody want?
Let me see if I can clarify. So the stones are spread out over 10 or 15 feet from the toe seaward. By consolidating them, that stone's gonna be relocated only to the toe, and we're gonna gain probably 10 feet of usable beach now because the stones won't be there. In reference to, can't see your name tag, I'm sorry.
John.
No.
Barbara.
Barbara, yes, Barbara. In reference to your comment, any solution you put on a coastal bank, including heavily planted beach grass, would stall or even stop sediment from coming out of the bank. So it's a balance of functions. Yes, we all know if you completely cut off the sediment source, then the beach drops. But the revetment isn't, well, the other revetment, the stones and the living shoreline, they're not causing erosion of the beach. And I said this a couple of years ago. If you look at aerial photographs, the exact same angle that is out there, one, it's the same angle as that revetment that's further to the north. The revetment comes around the shoreline, for some reason it goes out at an angle. If you look 40 years back on aerials, and I believe we did this when we first filed this order, the shoreline has just been marching back for 40 years at the same angle. The revetments upstream, the living shoreline, all of that haven't changed it one bit. Now, both sites do compensatory nourishment now as required. 200 cubic yards a year as required by National Heritage is being put on the Mordecai property, and 400 yards a year is being put on by the Prater. And that just occurred not too long ago. And they're required to do that every year. So you're getting your compensatory storage. And the balance here is we have to be really careful how much sand we put out there, because this is a one small instance where too much sand is a bad thing. And we learned that when the shellfish got inundated with when the bank was actively eroding. So I understand what you're saying, but in my opinion, the rocks don't cause the erosion. The erosion causes the erosion, and it's just marching on.
We're not saying that the rocks cause the erosion. Are you saying that when you talk about this angle, are you talking about are you saying that the rate of retreat in adjacent places with revetments is the same as this project site?
No, when you come along the shoreline, let's say this is north, and you're coming along the shoreline. Let's see, let me do it this way. So the shoreline wraps around like this, but this angle is about the same as the revetment that's here, and that's about 40 years from here to there. So that angle of erosion has never changed, in my opinion. And like I said, you can go on Google Earth and look at it, and that just row of what used to be beach. I mean, there was a beach and salt marsh out here, just like there is back here, but it just keeps going. And it's going to keep going. We can't stop it.
Now, what's causing the end scouring here?
Where a shoreline is, oh yeah, there's no microphone. Where a shoreline is protected, it will erode less or not at all. And where it's not protected, it's going to erode. So I know that there's theories out there that these structures cause that end effect. I don't believe that at all. The rocks absorb energy, they reflect it different directions. It's not concentrated. It's simply where the shoreline is protected, it doesn't erode, and where it isn't protected, it does.
But
we can't stop that.
The coastal geologists tell us it's accentuated, it's worsened because you're cutting off sediment supply from up gradient. That's why you have greater erosion just down gradient of these structures. That's what they're saying.
And that's why we have compensatory storage, is compensatory nourishment that's built into the permit. and that won't change.
Where's the living part of this living shoreline?
Well, unfortunately, nature decided that she didn't want it to live there.
Yeah.
Is this a velocity zone?
Yeah, just a living shoreline would have never actually, what was proposed with the living shoreline, I'm surprised got permitted because it's very difficult to have successful living shorelines in a high velocity.
There's never been a marsh there.
It's too high, yeah, it's not, so this is, I mean, they're amending an existing permit, but there's no longer a living shoreline there. This is a hybrid solution. And I just want the commission to think a little bit about what the alternatives are here. Because for this property, I agree that this does not necessarily meet their requirements, but the alternative for this property is to do a lot of nourishment, which will have adverse effects to the shellfishermen. So this is a very complicated site. I'm not going to say it's, but that is the alternative, is for them, the soft solution, the core rules as they are, we know do not work.
Well,
They're inundated with, they need
They have
to
to
be,
be replaced. Well, that's the nature of that material. It's temporary.
but it does, and in my opinion, in this location, it has not lasted more than 6 months. They're not, because of the saltwater inundation, they're just always wet. You can't get them above mean high water. If you look at like the one that just went in on 195 Kendrick, that one is doing great because it's above mean high water. This one that touches mean high water, it's almost an they'd have to be redoing it 2 or 3 times a year. So that's why I think this site is a little different, because while it does work, it deteriorates so quickly and creates, hazards out there. So having just a short gabion wall to lift those above mean high water could be a reasonable solution. It's not my decision. You are 100% allowed to disagree with me, but
Well, our job isn't really to protect the property.
yeah, but you're right. But the alternative for this property owner that is permittable is to nourish more than they are right now.
Okay, so I need to ask, is it just dogma, or do we know for sure that the sand, the renourishment is so excessive that it's smothering shellfish pens?
Yeah, I think Nancy's probably here. Yeah.
Well, I mean, somebody actually studied it.
I have a
Yes,
if you dump it all at once, yes, but maybe it gets put down several times, 4 times a year instead of once.
Yeah, I mean, there are time of year restrictions, so it can't happen 4 times a year, but it could happen 2 or 3 times a year, which is what Mark already proposed with on this one, is to do it twice a year instead of doing it all at once.
Trying to make the best of a bad situation, and there's trade-offs, there's compromises. There's no good solution here.
I guess I'm not. I wasn't wild. None of us were with the rocks that are there now.
Yeah.
This is me kind of wanting to step out of my normal position and take the compromise position. Moving the existing rocks into these cages and then moving them up closer to the bed and then putting your fiber rolls on top of it. To me, I mean, if you came in with just, we're gonna put in the gabions with bring all that fresh, I'd be more resistant. But since the rocks are there now and they're not doing anything except just sitting there, putting the rocks in the structures and then putting them back, maybe, and then putting the fiber rolls on top of it might be a solution.
But the rocks laying on the beach don't have the same effect of the wave reflections that the gabions would have. I mean, granted, they are rough surface, a fairly small rock, so they will.
And stuff will
break
move,
that up.
and from what I understand, water moves through these gabions and sediment drips back, so it's not a wall.
Well,
Yeah.
it's intended to retain the coastal bank. So
Right.
in that sense, it's a wall.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
But it's not protecting the whole bank, it's just protecting the
Well,
foot
all
of it.
that's what erodes, right?
Right.
Just as a point of information, does the shape of the rocks matter once they're in the gabion?
No. No, and the rocks are there now, and yeah, they're gonna dissipate some wave energy, but it's cobble. And when they're more consolidated into the gabions, they're gonna absorb, it's gonna absorb more wave energy and not like a revetment that has big stones. These are all, they're this big. So when the waves hit the gabions, hydrodynamically speaking, the energy goes everywhere. And will get dissipated much better than it is now. I know the fiber rolls are sagging like old age. They're never meant to be below mean high water. They're supposed to be installed above mean high water, but as the living shoreline deteriorated, they have now sagged down. That's going to get corrected, and that should reduce the amount of maintenance. Because remember, every time they go in to maintain this, you've got to bring equipment in, the minor amount of disturbance and all of that. None of this was a set up to forget it solution. We're just trying to work with what's there, work with nature, and figure out the best way forward. The alternative of putting nothing but fiber rolls there is going to be a disaster. You guys know that just from experience. So this is kind of a hybrid, the best available option that we have that accomplishes the goals and leaves the natural part of it where it's out of the wave energy.
I seem
Yes,
to
ma'am.
recall that this started on one property, maybe Mordecai. And then because of the erosion that was happening at the adjacent property, then Frager. And now I'm wondering, okay,
Who's next?
who's next? And are they gonna get this kind of treatment too?
It can happen. I mean, if the shoreline is still retreating east. So the next property, it's a ways away, but we just have to deal with that when it gets there.
I have a question, Alicia. So are you saying that if they don't have a hard structure, then we have to let them dump sand there, re-nourish?
Yeah. That is the permittable solution, so they can come back and say, the property owners have the right to protect their property within the Wetlands Protection Act, so they can come back and say, okay, well, you didn't let us do X, Y, Z, so we're dumping 1,200 yards of sand there twice a year. And we cannot at that time address shellfish concerns. That is, we consider that, but that's outside of our commercial shellfish is outside of our purview.
But
So
don't we have some jurisdiction over how much sand?
yeah, but it would be like it's the calculation. So if they say this is how much sand we need to protect our property, and that that whole calculation is there, there's we can deny it, but it won't hold up in court.
Isn't a commercial shellfish bed within the wetland resource that we're supposed to protect? Why is it not within our jurisdiction?
Well, not so aquaculture is, but a lot of it is just the water, like the commercial side of it, the grants. That's not considered like exempt from the, how do I say this?
It's public wetland resource.
Right, but we can talk about how it affects wild shellfish.
But it's all aquaculture there.
Yeah.
No one's wild shellfish.
Yes, so it's very difficult to.
Well, that's a nuance I didn't know about.
I do remember from one of the hearings that we did have a lot of shellfish.
Yeah, so
They came and complained. One year that we did do 800 yards. They came to the. Really.
Well, I mean, it's totally my one that sand planet. I think it's still anecdotal. My son shellfish, they see things, I see things, but it's anecdotal unless you really study it.
And
Well, I know from comparing the surveys that year that 800 yards a year was coming out of the bank by itself, and the year that we put 800 to compensate for it, which still wasn't enough, that buried the shellfish, and that's when we got the complaint. So we know that is a tipping point. That is too much sand. So to Leisha's point, I don't think we can put enough sand out there to compensate for the erosion on an unprotected bank without destroying shellfish reef.
Can I make a suggestion? Nancy has her hand up, but I just want to finish this conversation. Maybe we ask Brian McCormick, the coastal process specialist, to weigh in on this if we wanted to get a third party perspective. And then that might just help us. He might be able to do some sand calculations for us to help us think about, the bigger picture or future.
I just wanted to, I don't know if anyone looked at these pictures, but these 5 rolls went in 2013 with on top of Gavion Base. They're on one of the great ponds on the south side of Martha's Vineyard. So those are the ponds. When they fill up, they breach them. So the 5 roll, if it had been just 5 rolls, they would have been gone probably in 3 years. So this has been in 13 years and it's still in good shape. Some years it needs more nourishment, but it stayed very stable.
Is there wave action there?
There is so there are times where this beach is 30 or 40 feet wide when they breach the pond. Then there are times when it's filled up and it's west facing. And it's a big pond. It's Tisbury Great Pond. So there's some pretty good waves in there sometimes. It's very low bank, but it's held up.
Did you say DEP didn't ask for the assistance?
I don't know.
I still think that an alternative would be to nourish a few times a year with whatever calculation is required. I realize there's time of year restrictions about driving out there, access, but that would be my preferred.
The rolls would have to be.
You would remove the rolls.
No, the rolls can stay. We already permitted those.
Yeah, and the rock.
And the rocks. I mean, you could move the rocks, consolidate them without putting them in gabions. Make it a more natural system.
Wouldn't hurt to have an objective.
Yeah,
look at it by a coastal process expert.
So what I'm hearing is seems to be at odds with what we've been hearing from other sources. So I think getting a third party opinion is a big idea.
Well, an objective. I think it would be an objective opinion.
An objective,
not just anecdotal.
So can we suggest?
Well, can we do you want to let Nancy talk?
Hi,
We're ready.
again. Thank you. Just to say, yes, there are a lot of shellfish farms and they are the ones who complained, but that is also a wild shellfishing area. And while not, I guess abundant, it doesn't have abundant resource, but it certainly carries oysters, quahogs, and it used to have, especially on Field Point, near where those farms are complaining, it used to have prolific steamer beds, and it doesn't anymore. And I don't know why, but that is just to say there are wild shellfish resources there.
Thank you, Nancy. Helpful enough.
In regards to your comment about just taking the rocks where they are and just pushing them up on the bank, they're too small. So the reason that they're too small, the waves would just push them back right out where they are now, because the living shoreline wasn't that far out on the beach. It didn't take up that much room. So over time, the waves, there's enough energy there to move those smaller rocks. So then the alternative is, okay, fine, put bigger rocks. Well, we don't want to do that either. So, but no, we can't just move the rocks back up. One storm, they'll just come out again and get moved around. So that the cages keep the stones in place. Water filters through them. Maybe a shellfish or two will grab onto them. They can still be nourished like we do, and they'll just take up a lot less room. And and the fiber rolls can be maintained above mean high water like they're supposed to and not sag and deteriorate so quickly.
It's a shame that the DMF won't let you just put an oyster reef in the intertidal.
Well, we looked into that. We
No,
had
not right there,
Oh.
because it's too, not enough, but in the intertidal,
down lower.
down low.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might dissipate some of the wave energy, but when you get a storm and a storm surge, all that's underwater now, and then it doesn't dissipate the wave energy, and you're back to getting whacked the full force.
Just up the beach from there, there's, I don't know if it's remnants from an old revetment that runs parallel to the beach, and it actually has high and low marsh growing behind it.
I've seen that, yeah.
And it functions really well. There's no erosion on the beach. It's almost like what they build in other states, a rock shelf or something. And it's doing a great job. What?
It's a living shoreline.
It's but it's got it's got fiddler crabs in there. It's got alterna flora. It's got everything.
Yeah.
But it's just got that little protection from that rock in the front.
Yeah, because otherwise it's a velocity zone, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I would suggest that we bring in this third person.
Yeah, we'll get Brian.
And suggest that you put off this to a later date till we can have that.
Yeah.
But is that okay with you guys?
Yep.
Yeah, and I will say this, Brian reviewed one of my projects recently and he did not come to the site. He needs to come to this site.
He does come to Wellfleet.
He's always come to, we've had him for 3 or 4 and he's always come to the site, so.
My project was in Monmouth and he did not come. He did a lot of research online and was informative, but he didn't come to the site. And I'm just saying it's imperative that he sees what.
Yeah, I mean, if we need to wait for him to come to the site, but we'll wait for him to come to the site.
The only thing we're concerned about in the time of year they're able to go ahead with is, I don't think that the fiber rolls are going to make it through this winter if we have storms. And the bank is in really good shape right now, but it won't be if it loses the toe.
So do you want to continue to, the next meeting is September 16th.
Well, we'll need to hear from Brian anyway, right?
Yeah, we can continue until then. At least that's the next meeting, and then I'll have more information for you.
No, that's fine. We're just talking about this winter being.
Yeah, I'll email Brian tomorrow and try to at least get him out there as soon as possible, so that because you guys got an emergency permit last year too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
would he want us to meet him out there, or?
I don't know.
I've met him on another fiber roll project before.
Yeah, I'll talk to him and I'll let you know. Sometimes I don't even meet him out there. Like if our schedules can't align, I just say go for it. But I'll be in touch.
So I move we continue this until September 16th.
Mm-hmm.
Second.
Yes.
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 Yes, and yes. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We need green cards on.
Did you give me the
Wellfleet.
I don't need the green cards then.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hand me that? I can add to the file. Yeah.
Okay, we have one more hearing. That's Giotto LLC 344 King Philip Road, map 35, parcel 178. SE 077-1612, a request for certificate of compliance for the reconstruction of an existing rock revetment and the access stairway improvements.
This property is the gift that keeps on giving. I think this is the 3rd or 4th COC that's come through. You probably remember this one. They replaced the bottom end of the stairs without permitting, so then they came back for an after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
But the lawyer just found this one in land court, and all the other ones were recorded in the regular registry. So everything is fine on that site, and I recommend approval.
We just need to clear the books.
Yep. Yeah, it's on the file. Yeah.
I move that we approve those with the fait accompli.
Second, Michael. Yes.
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 Yes. And yes. Okay. I knew we could do it.
I move that we close the public hearings.
Second,
Yes.
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 Sure, why not? Yeah. Okay. So why don't we begin conducting our business meeting? Attendance we have Michael Fisher, Donna Portnoy, Barbara Brenessa, John Kumbler, and Leon Shreves. We still have a quorum. So do we have any jurisdictional opinions?
Yes, the Chris Road.
One jurisdictional opinion, Chris Road, they need to do road.
Chris Drive is
Oh,
technically.
Chris Drive, they need to do road work to be in compliance with DPW to plow. So
DPW has a list of private roads that they will plow,
Right.
and the ones that they won't.
Yeah.
And if there's overgrowing branches and trees, they won't.
Yeah.
And-
My road was in the front.
and so there's a little bridge there, and the
Creek.
upper reaches of the Herring River go pass through, so they need a permit. So they're gonna
So what are they gonna do?
trimming
Some of those
3 feet.
Overhanging branches of willow and black alder, which are.
Yeah, I don't think there are any big trees that are 3 feet, but
Yeah.
there may be some saplings or.
Yes.
Well, doesn't the cover provided by the tree protect the herring as when they are migrating?
It's arching over the road and over the.
Yeah, there's a culvert over that
Yeah.
area, so
We have to have
Yeah, we
14
talked about roads.
14 feet before they'll.
Yeah, I know.
and so they.
But yours might not be in a wet.
It says
No.
that when I talked to him on the phone, he said that it's mostly pruning and there'll be very little full tree removal, if any, but technically. I mean, technically road maintenance for stuff like this is exempt,
Yeah, right.
so,
So my only question is if you issued a JO, would that be for this year or just for
this year.
so every year?
Every year you need it done. Yeah. This might be a bigger conversation. This commission has always done JOs for road work, but it is exempt activity. They don't really need to ask for permission. A lot of other towns.
Well, it's the property owners that are doing it, not the DPW.
It doesn't matter. It's exempt activity. Yeah, because it's public. It's a public safety issue as well. You need to be able to get emergency vehicles through there. So that's exempt. Access is exempt activity. So this commission has always done it under jurisdictional opinions, but they can just get it fully administratively approved by me.
Who's asking for this?
I asked because that letter we got.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just.
Yeah. But we just did one on Fox Island Road. We did one there where they were clearing and doing some regrading, not
It
paving.
sounds like you don't even need a jurisdictional.
You don't.
I just wanted to stop them from doing mass,
Yeah.
I think.
we should keep the tradition of
That's fine.
doing it.
So
even though
then
technically they don't have to, because at least it.
it gives us a little bit of oversight, and it also it helps me to know what's going on when I get phone calls. But this is a paved road, but on the unpaved road, it's really nice to know what materials they're using. Because that can make a difference, or if they decide they're gonna pave them, then they would have to put, controlled stormwater. Anyways,
So I support this, just, whatever.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
I guess yes, even though it's my property, that
You can say, you have to abstain.
I'll abstain.
Yes.
And yes.
I abstain.
You go to the middle of the creek. Does that work?
I am to the middle of the creek. Dig a line up both.
Okay, do we have any mail or other discussion items? I think we're disgusted. We've been discussed thoroughly tonight.
but they're gone now.
We discussed it.
Oh, wait, I did have one. Sorry, Barbara.
No, go ahead.
Real quick, just to update everybody on what's going on with the ice machine that they got an RDA for, and now the plans are changing. It's very fluid. I haven't gotten, they'll probably come to us for a change of plan, but I haven't gotten anything solid yet. But I'll just.
They had
That's all that-
something there, it's all of a sudden.
That's all I know.
How did-
That's
how
the
did this
most
happen?
information I have right now, but I just wanted to notify you that at least they're communicating with me.
Trouble yourself.
Yeah.
Don't-
I don't need to.
don't-
Never mind. Okay.
And the only other thing I wanna say is two words, Chipman's.
Chipman's Cove.
Because it's gonna open up before we know it,
Right.
and if there's not a management plan. We need an
What happened to
alternative.
the work group?
Well, it's been difficult.
No.
Yeah, I'll email Nancy tomorrow and get something scheduled.
If nothing happens, have Leisha go out and put the sign, no driving past this point, and not somebody else put the sign because the sign keeps creeping.
Yeah, one, I think we
Or
should,
yes,
at the very least,
take
get
that
some
way.
split rail fencing out there to stop it. Okay.
Just stop a pickup.
Oh, we have minutes.
Do we have minutes?
Yes.
You think so?
Does anybody have any input on the minutes?
Who's gonna do minutes?
Nobody.
What's name?
Jen will fix these, but no, the new person will do minutes for this meeting.
From the recording?
I mean, I will probably end up being for this one, because it was kind of a.
So, hiring a new Jen,
It hasn't been advertised yet,
well,
but there's, yeah, we have to have it.
I just have one word, I wasn't sure on. I didn't know what that meant. Maybe it's correct, but I just didn't know what that meant approximately.
Mm-hmm,
I would just leave the word out.
yeah.
I have one minor thing, the
Yeah, at 6 o'clock.
Sorry, you shut them, stop the meeting.
you did a very quiet title of the mosquito control agency, it's Kick on Mosquito Control Project.
Okay. Great.
I moved that we,
No, I said we haven't approved the minutes yet.
oh, that's right, okay,
I moved to approve the minutes on whatever date that is.
yeah, thank
Yes. Yes.
you.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Now I can move that we turn.
Right, I second that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yes.